Okay. We good to go, Vicky?
We are good to go and live.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of Cambridge East Community Forum. I'd like to thank you for joining us. My name is Chris Carter, and I'm Delivery Manager for Strategic Sites at Greater Cambridge Shared Planning Service, which is the shared planning service of Cambridge City Council and South Cambridgeshire District Council. First of all, just to mention that this meeting is being recorded and will be available after the meeting. Firstly, I'd like to ask if any councillors present would like to make themselves known to the audience. And if so, you can do this in the Q&A function. And perhaps we'll just highlight that at an appropriate point a bit later in the presentation. This is the second virtual meeting for Cambridge East Community Forum. And in common with those held in North West Cambridge and North East Cambridge, is a place for the exchange of information, provision of updates, and a chance to get to know those who are helping to shape new developments in this part of Cambridge. I'd ask that all those involved this evening acknowledge that we have some people attending who have been engaged with the development of sites for a long time, but also those who may be new to this and with very little knowledge of the sites, and therefore this meeting acts as an overview of the sites on the agenda this evening. Further meetings of this forum will be held every 3 or 4 months, and it's likely that, COVID permitting, the way in which meetings are held will differ as we go on. The meeting this evening will be a series of short presentations from developers and key third parties involved in these sites. As we go through these presentations, if you have any questions, please type them concisely if you can in the Q&A function, and we'll pick those up and relay to the appropriate person at the end of each presentation.
Chris, can I very briefly just pause you there? Sorry, we've had a comment just quickly to say, are you able to be a bit closer to your microphone or speak a little bit louder?
I apologise. Is that
Thank you.
better? I may have to hold it up to my mouth, so sorry about that. We will seek to conclude the session promptly at 7:30. The meeting, as I said, is being recorded and will be posted on the Cambridge East Community Forum webpage. Attendees will not be recorded, but names will be displayed when asking questions. If there are questions for which we need to find the answers after the meeting, they too will be posted on the webpage. Before we start the presentations, I would like to address the matter of the recent planning application from Anderson's Group for the land south of Coldham's Lane. Some will know that Anderson's attended the previous forum. The applicant is not with us this evening, but will be invited to a future meeting. The current position with the application is that it was recently submitted to the council and is in the consultation period, which runs until the 18th of July this year. Anyone wishing to make comments on that application can do so via the planning pages of the council website. The current consultation is not only open to members of the public, but also involves consultation with a variety of specialist technical consultees. And at present, it's not anticipated that any decision will be made on this application until the autumn. There are a number of people on the screen this evening. They'll be introducing themselves when it comes to their item, but thank you all for being present and contributing. So I would like to invite the first speaker or speakers, which is in relation to the land north of Cherry Hinton, and we have Alexis and Daniel with us. Thank you.
Can I just note we've got Councillor Toomey Hawkins from South Cambs and Councillor Bennett from Abbey and Councillor Claire Daunton also joining us.
Thanks, Vicky. Alexis and Daniel, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. I've shared my screen, so hopefully everyone can see that, if that's come up yet.
Yep. Yes, that's there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so hello, everybody. My name is Daniel Rapson. I'm one of the project directors for the joint venture partnership of Bellway and Latimer Housing Association on the site known as Land North of Cherry Hinton. Tonight we're going to give you a very brief run through in terms of where we are in terms of the application, give you a brief sort of summary as to obviously the journey so far, and which I know a lot of you will be au fait with in terms of where we are. So the site was acquired in March of this year by the joint venture partnership. Site benefits from an outline planning consent for 1,200 units, which was granted in December 2020, and the site was acquired in March of 2021. in the time that we've acquired it, and prior to that as well, we've been sort of assembling a team, and we're pulling together as well. We've had initial interaction with the Greater Cambridge Shared Planning Authority, looking at our next phases. What we'd like to do is, I'm going to pass you over to my colleague Alexis, who is the lead architect. We'll be doing the master planning, design code elements as well. And at the end, I'll wrap up with what our timeline looks like and our trajectory for the next 3 to 6 months in terms of the work streams that will be going forward and the opportunities for everybody to sort of contribute to that evolution as well. So I'll hand over to Alexis now.
Thanks, Daniel. Yes, my name's Alexis Butterfield. I'm an associate partner at the architects Pollard Thomas Edwards, and I'm sort of backed up by a huge team of people who unfortunately can't be with us at the moment. So a little bit about us and as a team and what we're going to be doing at the moment, what we're doing at the moment, and what we're going to be doing. Belwen and Latimer have put together a really quite extensive consultant team. And one of the nice things that we're finding is that each member of the team has worked extensively in Cambridge, so knows it really well. The design team, as Daniel said, the design team is being led by us, and we're acting as architects and master planners for the development. We're working closely with that whole team that we talked about, but we have a particular focus working with the landscape architects, who are Matt Lee, and the engineers Woods Hardwick. This is because together these are going to be the sort of really critical things that are going to protect the character. By coordinating together, we're going to be protecting the character, we hope, of what we're going to be creating. And it's about coordinating with them the technical, the landscape, the architectural parts of that design, so that we get that sort of integrated approach. What we're going to be doing, first of all, is we're starting to look at a site-wide design code. This will be developed in close cooperation with the Council's urban design team, who we've worked with as Pollard Thomas Edwards before. It'll be a concise document, and it'll cover aspects of design quality with materials, landscape requirements, and design do's and don'ts as well. And just thinking about how buildings and streets need to be designed to work together well. The design code's rules will then apply to every phase of the development. While we are undertaking this work, we're also going to be developing the detailed master plan layout. This will pick up on the work we're doing with the design code. They need to be very much handled together. And we're hoping to share with you today some of the kind of work in progress that we have in terms of starting to develop that more detailed design. Then this work will then be closely followed by our initial reserved matters applications, which we'll be undertaking, which will include things like the infrastructure and the first residential phases. Next slide. So,
sorry.
No, that's quite all right.
There you go. Sorry.
Okay. Technology. So just for those who don't know the site and its boundaries, it's quite a large site. It's just to the south of the Cambridge Airport airfield, and it essentially lies between the airfield and Cherry Hinton itself. And it also lies both within Cambridge City Council and also South Cambridge District Council. So we go next slide, please. So just a quick look at that outline consent that the site has. As Danny said, it was granted in 2020. It's for 1,200 homes of a whole range of mixed types and tenures, but with 40% affordable housing. It includes a local centre. It has 2 schools, a primary school and a secondary school with their playing fields. And one of the important things that was captured at the outline stage, which we need to pick up on, is there were 3 major points of access, or road access, that were created. And so it's about sort of working within those that were, as they were, sort of fixed within this stage of the designs. There's around 11 hectares of public open space as part of this outline design. And there were some quite important principles that were set up as well. Things like a landscape-led sustainable drainage system approach. And that's something we're really picking up on as we work through into more detail. Just to say that the design you can see here is what accompanied the outline consent. It's the illustrative master plan. And this was prepared by Terence O'Rourke. So next slide, please. So, as I said, one of the things we want to do is think about how we can take those outline principles and start really thinking about how they can turn into fully fledged design proposals. And also along the way, thinking about how we can enhance things as well, adding more green space and things like that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take you through a kind of evolving master plan, really, starting to think about, say, some of that detail. And if we go to move 1, if that works, there we go. So the first thing is recognizing what was put in at the outline stage. This is particularly things like what we call existing blue-green infrastructure. Essentially, this is major pieces of green landscape dedicated to the natural management of water. So we're preserving all of that within our designs, but we kind of want to add more as well. So we go to the next move. One of the things we want to do is create what we're calling greenways. We see these as sort of landscape superhighways. They're traffic free and traffic segregated, and they're safe to make them safe for cycling and walking. And the key idea is that you're kind of moving through nature, and the idea that you can connect some of these green spaces together to promote a primary choice of walking and cycling for the whole development. And this is very much just working within the outline consent in terms of its overall parcels of areas of development. So next move. And in developing these, we want to also connect together a series of green squares, parks, and play spaces. So these run alongside those, what we call these greenways. At the heart of the design, we have a village green that we create, and the greenways then connect that village green with all the other major green spaces into what we're kind of conceiving as a green network. This acts as corridors both for people but also for nature, and links, and also then helps to link our neighbourhoods to the surrounding neighbourhoods. Move 4. We also want our greenways to link up with the planned schools, the community uses, shops and markets and allotments that are planned for the development. The idea is that wherever you are in the development and wherever you need to go, you're just a short walk or short cycle ride away on a convenient greenway to get you to where you need to be. So you can connect all these different places together in that way, and it makes it a really sort of not car-led development. So if we go to the next slides, what we start to do is from those initial sketches that we put together working with the Bellway team, we're now looking at how that can sort of start to translate into plans. And this is just a very sort of early stage work in this. So the first thing is thinking back to those enhanced green spaces and enhanced kind of blue spaces. So what we want to do is we want to include extensive areas of suds gardens, and along the primary route in particular with tree planting. The idea being that as you move around the development, you're always seeing this suds landscape, and it's as unengineered as possible, it's as natural as possible. The next part is that larger village green, the enhanced facilities that can line it with more access to landscape. We want to have an enhanced landscape strategy for open space along Teversham Drift and also Cherry Hinton Road. And finally, we want to have soft planted rain gardens in place of hard engineered, what we call sort of rills and things like that, and other drainage features. Again, trying to make things as soft and natural as possible. So next slide. We want to think about enhancing the community and non-residential uses. One of the things that we think is that the lessons of the last year or so has been the importance of being able to have really great community uses on your doorstep and have those quite flexible. So we're looking at ways of increasing the amount of non-residential and community provision, and how some of that can be brought forward earlier in the development programme. We think it's going to be really important to create that sort of heart for the place. The new community facilities will be focused around 2 main public spaces: a large village green located right in the heart of the development next to the primary school, and then a smaller market square area, which is part of the secondary school area of development. Then we're thinking about how we can also start to think about how there's early sales areas and things that can happen, and they might appear near what we call Junction 2, the roundabout area. Next slide. And then thinking about those greenways, what are they going to be like? So we've started to develop the diagram, thinking about how we can create, as I say, this network of safe routes, providing those convenient alternatives to the motor car with this high quality infrastructure that connects residents with facilities and the world beyond. This diagram shows how the designated pedestrian and cycle routes through linear parks and greenways kind of works. The layout is being designed so that all the homes and all the new facilities are within a sort of 10-minute walk of our new village green. We're really keen to make sure this sort of works as a fully walkable neighbourhood. And then I think my final slide. Next slide, please. So finally, just looking at some architectural and project precedents. These are all projects that we've done, but just to go through it, we really realized at the start of the project that even at the start of the project that we're developing what we're calling a sort of landscape-led master plan, very much thinking about how the buildings and the routes and the spaces need to relate to those soft landscapes that we want to create, and that's going to be key to its success as a character, and actually sort of creating that special sense of place. What this page shows is a collection of relevant projects. It shows both recent and completed and current developments, either by Bellway or by members of the design team. In line with the imagery we're showing here, we anticipate the building is going to be designed in high quality and contemporary way, and will include a rich mix of architecture that picks up on different aspects of Cambridge's unique built character, and also to reflect particularly on the sites, this being at the kind of Cambridge's edge and picking up on that sort of agricultural edge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pass back to Daniel, and he's going to talk you through what we think are going to be the next steps of the project. Daniel?
Yeah, someone muted me without me looking. So yeah, thank you, Alexis, in terms of that as well. I think this last slide really sort of demonstrates in terms of our our track record in terms of one of the reasons why we chose Alexis and his team is obviously their sort of recent history in terms of that, and sort of working on stuff as well. And I think what we also wanted to show is that sort of explode the myth really in terms of, I think the top right of that slide there shows obviously sort of stuff that we've done previously as well. So again, just to give people sort of the sort of a flavour in terms of what we can bring forward and what we can deliver in terms of that as well. So moving on to the final slide, I just wanted to talk about programme in terms of that as well. So there's obviously going to be a number of sort of key stakeholder events that's working with the local authorities or the districts, the county council, and obviously with the local members, and obviously the community as well in terms of developing it coming forward as well. And I've seen a couple of questions come forward in terms of that, which we can sort of address in a minute as well. I think in terms of where we are at the moment, I sort of wouldn't want to sort of go too far into the future, but in terms of what we're looking at the moment, now sort of one of the things we need to do is prepare sort of a site-wide design code, which is ongoing, and we're sort of working through that as well. And we're looking to sort of do that work over the next sort of 3 months. We'll start on site. We've got a number of sort of preparatory works and sort of enabling works we need to do. There's obviously predominantly archaeology. We've got some minor remediation that we need to do. We've got water courses that we need to protect and to potentially divert, and we've got infrastructure such as a gas main, an intermediate pressure gas main that we need to divert as well. So people will see action on site in terms of what we're doing, but obviously this is to enable the ground to be prepared, ready for once we've got our reserve maps applications, which are going to be over the next 6 to 9 months, to enable us to start our access roads in spring 2022. And then new homes will basically commence in autumn 2022. So that basically gives you a sort of a flavour in terms of where we're going as well. So hopefully that's been informative, and sort of pass over to any questions.
Daniel, thank you, Alexis. Julian, do we have any questions?
We do, yes. Simple question to start with. Will there be lighting on the greenways?
Do you want me to answer these, Daniel?
Yeah, you can go for that one.
Yes, absolutely. They'll all be lit. We haven't put together obviously a lighting strategy or anything for those yet, but yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Slightly longer one here. There are multiple large developments starting to come forward in the East Land, south of Cherry Hinton Airfield site, GCP Eastern Busway, Cambridge East Railway Station, possibly combined with a realignment of the railway. These interact with land north of Cherry Hinton in important ways, in particular in relation to road access to Coldham's Lane from Newmarket Road and the A14. Will the design team revisit the decision not to create a perimeter bypass road as part of the land of north of Cherry Hinton that would relieve the residential eastern part of Coldham's Lane, Tevisham Drift?
I don't know why that decision was made in terms of that. Obviously, we didn't secure the outline planning consent, so it's difficult for me to really answer that one tonight. In terms of that, it's definitely something we'll take away and have a look at and understand the sort of the genesis and the evolution of why that decision was made. And one thing I would say is obviously the primary roads that we are providing does provide a link from Coldham's Lane to Tevisham and to Airport Way and Gazelle Way roundabout as well. So there will be a link through how that is going to interact and how that's going to improve the wider network. Obviously, we need to sort of develop that further. So I apologise that I couldn't answer that one straight as well, but we will take that away and have a look at that as well.
Thank you. A bit more about the green spaces and the style of them. Are they more akin to Cherry Hinton Hall, if you're familiar with that, or more the rectangular patch of no ball games areas as we have scattered generally around the city? And we need greater than 1 hectare of space on the style of Botanic Gardens. What's needed, apparently.
So I think, yeah, I mean, I think Alexis and I are probably on the same page in this one. I think in terms of it definitely won't be rectangular spaces with no ball games at the end of the day. I think they're going to be a variety of spaces in terms of that are usable and are obviously in keeping in terms of that as well. Obviously, you can sort of on the screen, you should see that's an image of where the village hub in terms of that, and you can see obviously the road sort of bypasses that in terms of that as well, and it's a big green sort of open space which is pedestrian cyclist friendly in terms of that, and they get the sort of route as well. So it's going to be a combination of spaces in terms of that. So we've got a lot of space in that as well that we'll be able to do that. Alexis, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that what we've tried to do at this stage, obviously we're at the kind of very broad master planning stage right now, so a lot of this is about, it's just really useful to hear those messages actually. But I think just from the outset, what we want to do is have a whole range, as Dana says, a whole range of different spaces. We've also tried to make sure that we're bringing together some green spaces so they are actually larger than they were at the outline stage, because that'll just help them to be more usable. Also trying to draw the busier roads away from those green spaces, again, to make them so they really can be used for a whole range of different functions, and they're just a bit more people friendly. It also means we can do things like in this illustration where we've got our village hub building going straight onto the green space rather than, say, being divided from it by roadways. So those are the sort of strategic moves we're taking at the moment, but absolutely we do want them to be really useful.
Thank you. I'm going to try and wrap 3 or 4 questions together here, but it's all around traffic and the addition of the population, travel to work, shops, etc. Coldham's Lane is inadequate to the current needs, and Tevisham Bypass, in one person's opinion, is near capacity. While I see efforts to promote cycling, walking, etc., there is no way all journeys will be that way. What about access to public transport? How will the conflict with Junction 3 on Coldham's Lane and Anderson site, 200 lorries per day, be managed? So it's really about the way in which the site impact on the transport and the way the Coldham's Lane especially is going to be used.
So as part of the outline planning consent, and as part of what we'd like to do as well, there's obviously providing a bus service that runs through the site as well. And I think it's about creating as many opportunities for people not to use a vehicle in terms of that and use other forms of transport. So obviously, as Alexis outlined as well, I think it's about making it more convenient to use cycling and walking, and making it a lot more accessible in that sense as well. Plus, obviously, we've got elements on site that will people don't need to travel far afield. So we've obviously got we'll be providing retail on site, as well as obviously the local education facilities, community facilities as well. And I think it's just creating those opportunities as part of the sort of evolution of the master plan as well, and obviously what underpins the outline consent and the SPD for the site as well.
Thank you. Just one about engagement, and it seems to be quite city focused as far as some people. To what extent has South Cambs design been taken into account, and what extent has there been to engage with neighbouring parishes? The plan seems to have changed since we last had a view of it. There was going to be a busway flowing through. Has that disappeared?
So I think last question sort of picks up. So the busway does flow through the site. So buses do travel through the primary road, primary route through the site as well. And in terms of the evolution of the master plan, it's underpinned by the approved SPD, and it's approved the approved sort of outline planning document, which essentially we've done a body of work where we've shown how it's evolved into that as well. And the current master plan thinking and the work that Alexis and his team are doing at the moment is very much centered around what has been sort of like that genesis, and it's basically sort of really picks up on some of those key themes that were in the evolution and the allocation of the site through the supplementary planning document as well. So it may look different. It probably looks different in the sense that it's a finer grain of detail, and we're sort of layering it up now. So, but we can assure you that it's basically meeting all the parameters that have been outlined for the site as well. Alexis, was there anything else on that?
Yeah, I think that's a really well put. I think that, apologies, we haven't. We probably should have had a couple more slides just to show things like the vehicular routes and things like that, which we didn't focus on. But yeah, we're maintaining all of the vehicular routes that were proposed, the key vehicular routes that were proposed in the outline consent, including in particular the bus routes. So all of those are maintained. This is very much adding on top in terms of really trying to strengthen non-vehicular routes in particular, and where we've got green spaces, adding more green space and more green connections to ensure a better, hopefully an improved green network as well to go alongside that. So it's a sort of it's that plus.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've got time for 2 more questions.
Yes, a couple more would be fine, I think. Thank you.
Thanks. Could you tell us a little more about any plans for indoor community space as well as in the outline planning permission?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a within the outline planning consent, there is a community space that sits in the centre as well. In fact, I might, if you just indulge me a little bit, I might just go back to one of the master plans that Alexis had in terms of, we can sort of see that. So if you see on this plan here, I've used this one as an example, where it says Village Green in the sort of in the centre of site, just north of the primary school. There's community facilities there as well. So it's like a lightish blue and a sort of yellow building just to the right of that green as well. So there's community space, community facilities provided as part of that. So that essentially will link into sort of the whole community. You've got the primary school there, the community hub, community space, community building there as well. You've also got the allotments slightly to the south of that as well. So essentially creating that sort of quite cohesive sort of community space in the centre of the site there.
Thank you. We have got a number of open questions. We're not going to get around to all of them, but we will attempt to get them answered in due course and put on our website, of course. But if I pick up Councillor Daunton's last question here, it might say a little more about how we can engage further in the coming months. Could you say a little more about the consultation process over the next 6 months? And can you comment, please, on the name Trinity Fields that appeared on a board at the site several weeks ago? Also, could you explain the phasing of the build?
I can, yeah. So, so in terms of consultation, we'll be running sort of specific consultation events for the site. So when the first sort of evolution of the master plan comes forward and we're sort of ready to present that to people and to get people's sort of views and comments on that, we'll be doing that. That will be over the next sort of few months once we've sort of engaged with colleagues at the council, the planning the planning department. Plus highways and all other key sort of elements as well. So we will be running sort of separate and inviting people to sort of comment on our proposals as they come forward. So there'll be a series of events, and that's been run by our PR company Connect, and so there'll be invites coming out to everybody shortly on that. In terms of the second name, Trinity Fields, Trinity Fields was essentially just trying to give it, instead of calling it land north of Cherry Hinton, it was something that sort of came forward. It's something that we are revisiting in terms of a sort of a name and that as well. I think it was just giving the development its own identity within that as well. So I think, like I say, Land North of Cherry Hinton isn't very catchy as well. But again, we're doing a separate body of work on that at the moment as well, and actually sort of probably want to throw that more out to the community to get a sort of a feel for that as well. And Councillor Dalton's last one, and the phasing of the build. So in terms of phasing the build, we'll be essentially commencing from the east of the site. So on this plan in front of you, junction 1 and junction 2, essentially the sort of key points of access, which will be sort of moving sort of from east to west into the sort of the heart of the site, and then basically we'll then start from, in a sort of few years after, we'll be starting from junction 3 and then moving in again. So essentially closing the site in, so basically building from out to in terms of that. So that's our plan in terms of phasing. But again, that's very, very high level. We are sort of like obviously developing that as and when the master plan sort of comes forward as well. So.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Alexis. That's been really helpful. Just to say, we will also note the questions that are in the chat as well as those that are in the Q&A, and responses will be prepared to all of those following the meeting. So I'd like to move on now to the Ida Darwin site, and Gary Goodwin from Morris Homes is going to speak to us. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you very much. My name's Gary Goodwin. I'm the Group Planning and Design Director for Morris Homes Limited. For those that didn't attend the last meeting, I was planning to have a quick run through of the design statements that we ran through last time. But what I want to start with is the layout in its revised form. So the planning application, the Reserve Matters planning application, now has been submitted since November of last year. We've had a number of consultation responses during the planning application, and the main consultation responses that we've had to respond to have been from County Highways regarding the proposed infrastructure and the proposed layout, from the Lead Flood Authority regarding the drainage of the site, and then finally from the Urban Design Department of South Cambs District Council. Again, just before I go through the design statements, prior to submitting the application, we did go through a consultation process with the Parish Council. We outlined 2 proposals for the scheme, one of which was a contemporary approach, and taking references from the city centre modern architecture. The second was a more traditional approach, referencing the village architecture and the village design guide that's been developed particularly by the Parish Council and fed into by the Parish Council for this area. And the choice of the urban designer for South Cambs and for the Parish Council was the more traditional scheme. So the scheme, on the face of it, doesn't look like it's changed that much. It still retains the existing woodland through the middle of the site as a public open space. I just can't get it, bear with me. As the public open space. That still links onto the community facilities, which will be the community hall, and the an apartment unit which mirrors that to form this feature at the end of the open space. And that leads on to the large area of public open space where we've got the majority of the existing trees to be retained. For those of us that attended the last meeting, you'll recall that we had a windmill journey.
Gary, Gary, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but occasionally you are going a bit robotic. So I wonder if you just putting your camera off might help with the sound.
Okay, bear with me. Okay.
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So some of you may recall that we had an important part of the scheme, and an important part of the scheme to the Parish Council was the windmill journey through the scheme. So the view of the distant windmill, and there were 2 key areas that where the windmill could be seen. The first one is down at the bottom of the site next to the Cambridge School, Cambridge Steiners School. And we've created a series of open spaces which incorporate the existing hospital trees, as we're calling them, and take you on a journey to the main public open space, where we've created a viewing platform in the centre of this open space area, where we can also see the windmill. And that's going to be quite a landmark, and we're going to incorporate some guidance features around that, which will tell you what you're looking at and in the distance. So all of those open space areas, as we said, they link up through the middle of the site, through the existing woodland, to this area of open space at the end. We've also got the ecology corridor that we have alongside the railway, and that links up with the open space as well. So in terms of the Parish Council have confirmed that they have no design objections to the scheme. In fact, have put in quite a positive consultation response that says they're in favour of the scheme. We've taken references to lots of the historic architecture of the village, and we've incorporated that. And the whole ethos of the scheme is a village that's been developed over time. You'll recall there was a 40% provision of affordable housing. And what we've done is we've tried to be quite clever about how that's integrated into the scheme. So not only is it pepper potted around the development, but it's also placed into small enclaves. So rather than large masses of built form to support the one-bedroom apartments, they are in small units that look like individual houses or a set of mews houses. So this is 9 apartments, for instance, in this corner, but it's designed to look like a series of buildings that are attached together, perhaps looking like 3 dwellings. So when we consulted with the county highways, they, with access already being approved in the outline planning consent, there was no comments about the access to the site or the number of houses proposed, but they were concerned with the amount of shared surfaces that we had within the scheme. And so what we've done is we've reduced those shared surfaces by taking in more standard, in inverted commas, roads into these sorts of areas. And the shared surface area has been shortened. Now that's also helped with some of our drainage proposals, which I'll come on to. The other major amendment to the scheme was that we'd originally planned a loop road around the existing woodland, but through South Cambs planning, we were also asked to put a road across here as well through the open space. We were never entirely comfortable with that ourselves, and neither was our architects, neither was our landscape architects. So we were quite pleased actually when the county council said that they didn't want that connection and they wanted that connection road to be taken out, so that the route is more it's diverse as you it's harder to get around the open space, and that way the buildings take precedent and the open space is uninterrupted. So that's a major change to the highway design. And again, some of the shared surfaces along here have been reduced in size. So on the drainage, because I know that was a concern and still is a concern of the parish council. So we've been liaising quite closely with the LLFA, the Lead Flood Authority. The Homes England had done their own site investigation. The hospital itself is self-draining. It drains through soakaways into the ground, and the ground is suitable to drain water that way. They'd done their own series of permeability tests to ensure that the drainage could carry on for the new development in that way. Perhaps, well, they had done a limited number of tests, and what the Lead Flood Authority have asked us to do is to do some extra tests. So those tests have been undertaken, and that showed that the permeability rate was slightly less than if you just take the figures from the original tests. So by doing more tests, it just put a lower rate on it, which actually means that we have to do a couple more sustainable drainage features on the scheme. So at the moment, we've got some depressions in the ground, one of which is in the ecology corridor. Another one is over here. We've got a series of these within the woodland. We've got another one here, and we've added one next to the community facility. Now, those are also going to be designed as wetland features so as to increase our ecology gain, our biodiversity gain. In addition to that, when we talked about these roads here and the shared surface element being changed, some of these roads are going to be made up of permeable paving, as is all the driveways to all the dwellings within the scheme. And that just allows the permeability rate of the dwellings of the whole scheme to meet that permeability rate that's been discovered after we've done the additional tests. So we had a meeting with the Lead Flood Authority on Friday of last week. They've confirmed that they're happy with the revised proposals. In fact, they've said that it's gone beyond what they expected, actually. So they're quite pleased. They've yet to provide their positive consultation response, but we're expecting that to come through any day now. And we're expecting also, although we have been told as well that the LFA have already informally told the planning officer at South Cambs that the objection is withdrawn. So that should sign off the drainage. We know that highways is now signed off. The revised scheme was submitted some weeks ago, and there's a revised consultation out at the moment, which again is due to end this week. So all being well, we're expecting to present the application to the South Cambs Planning Committee on the 27th of July. Either that or the council may choose to approve it by delegated powers, because it is a reserved matters approval. But either one of those scenarios should mean that we are hopefully, fingers crossed, heading towards a planning approval at the end of this month, at the end of July. Don't think there were any other concerns or any questions that were raised at the last meeting that we haven't addressed through this planning application. So, but obviously I'm here to answer any additional questions that people may have.
Thank you, Gary. Julian, do we have any questions?
Yeah, so first question, will the Fulbourn scheme be endowed with a capital sum efficient to maintain the open spaces and landscaping to a good or high standard? If not, how will it be paid for?
Yes, the open space, it's proposed that we have a private management company for the development. Now, the way that we set up management companies is, because I know there's been some question marks about how some developers do these, but we set up a management company that's legally owned by the residents. So each resident signs up to become part of that management company when they buy the property. We'll also appoint a management agent that will sit alongside that management company from the beginning, and they will organise the community meetings to discuss the landscape proposals. They calculate the landscape management fee, and the residents will pay a management fee per month forever, in perpetuity. The residents have complete control over that management agent, and if that management agent if they're not satisfied with the standard, for instance, of the way that the open spaces are being maintained, then they have the ability to sack and gain a new management agent. At the moment, our favoured management agent is Trust Green, who are a very ethical company based in Cheshire, but also that operate nationally. They're a non-profit organisation. They earn their profits through school maintenance and hospital maintenance. The open spaces they do on a non-profit basis. So we're very pleased that they're on board for this particular development. It means that local residents have stewardship. It means they have ownership of that open space. And whenever they sell their property, they're selling the property with the same covenants. They're also selling on their part ownership of that management company. And in addition to that, the open space the maintenance of the open space is controlled by condition. So there is a management regime written by our landscape architects, Barnes Walker, that says that the open space has to be managed in this way. And that means that any management agent has to comply with that management regime as well.
Thank you. This one's regarding affordable homes. Are there likely to be any genuinely affordable homes for families as opposed to just one-bed apartments?
Yeah, there's the affordable housing is dictated by the Section 106 agreement that's already attached to the planning permission, the outline planning permission. That dictates that there's a requirement for a percentage of 1-bedroom apartments, 2-bedroom houses, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom houses, and a number of 4-bedroom houses. So that the mix that's been provided within the scheme is in strict accordance with that Section 106 agreement, and that's based on the established need for the area. So there's been a housing needs assessment before the Section 106 agreement was written, so that we know that we're and all of that will be provided in conjunction with a registered social landlord.
Thank you. Schools. Which local schools is it envisaged the kids on the hospital site will attend, and how's it anticipated they'll get there?
I must confess, I don't have knowledge of the local schools, so it's difficult for me to answer that question.
Okay, maybe one we'll get back to put on the website.
Yeah, I think
later.
we'll come back to you on that.
Given the volume of groundworks and semi-permeable paved areas, will you be incorporating ground source heat pumps?
No, it's not a ground source. The ground isn't suitable for ground source heat pumps. And the gardens aren't generally large enough for that technology either. There is an element of so we are overachieving the building regulations on here, and also with the new building regulations which come into effect in June of next year, June 2022, there will be an element of this site that's built to the new Future Home Standard. And so the insulation values and an element of renewables will be included in the scheme. So at the moment, the proposal is to include solar panels on some of the houses, so that we achieve a percentage reduction in reliance on the grid, as well as over and above achievements on the building regs, and then a 70% improvement when the new 2022 regulations come in.
Thank you. Back to the green spaces, will they be accessible to non-residents, given that the residents of the development will be paying for its upkeep?
Absolutely. There's within the scheme itself, when I was talking about the windmill route, you can actually see that there are public footpaths that leaving the site, and there's also public footpaths at the eastern end of the site as well, which link into the existing housing routes. So it'll be open for everybody to share. The whole idea is it's an extension of the existing community, not a standalone development and gated in the same way that they do in Florida.
And are you aware that many residents who end up in properties where they have to pay additional management fees to their council tax end up resenting it? And many conveyancers don't make it clear to new owners at point of purchase. How do you manage that conflict?
Well, we have our own in-house legal department. We don't rely on external solicitors, and we also have a sign-off procedure where every single purchaser has to sign off the documents that they've seen when they go into the show house and before they exchange contracts. And one of those documents is the management charge, the management fee, the management structure, and a full demonstration of how that works. We are completely open about everything that's involved within the developments, and because of things that have happened in the past, and we were already doing that before some of the recent occurrences with things like leasehold. So we've always been very clear and very open with our prospective purchasers about what the needs of the developments are.
Julian, I think we have time for just a couple more questions, please.
I think we're more or less done on those, Chris.
We can. Excellent. That's great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for those questions. Thank you, Gary, for answering them and for the presentation. That's been really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we move on now to Debbie Wildridge, or Wildridge. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your surname, from Locality, and you're going to talk about the community work on Marley.
Thank you, Chris. And I answer to Wildridge, Wildridge, or anything in between. Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. If you could let me know when you can see it. Can everybody see that?
Yes, we've got that now. Thank you.
Excellent. Good. Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to spend 5 minutes talking about the work which Locality is doing in Mali. We were appointed by South Cambs District Council, and Locality is a national organisation, network organisation, where we support community organisations to be strong and successful. This is a picture I took recently at Mali. You can see that the building is well underway. This was a farmers market, well attended by both the community and local people. So this is what we are intending to do and starting to do. It's really about linking new residents to the existing services and provision, identifying any gaps that there may be, and looking to activate them to help in the community building process. We're also looking to connect key partners to ensure that the community is best served, and providing an evidence base and a measured framework for showing progress towards that new community being built. And finally, it's all about building a self-sustaining legacy for the work. This is a bit of work that we're doing with our colleagues Social Life, which is a measurement of how effective the community is surrounding Mali in the first stage, and we've just been undertaking some interviews. We will redo that work in year 3 and year 5 to measure the effectiveness of the work that we're doing with the new community. So I've mentioned community engagement and development. That's very much strongly what we're about, and we do have a site presence, and we do a sort of communication and service triage. And I've mentioned the evidence base and the measured framework. I'll also just talk very briefly about the legacy. So the type of work that we're doing will be working with the existing partners to have a sort of calendar of events, so that we are working alongside events which are already organised for Mali, perhaps by the sales and marketing team, perhaps by those people in the surrounding areas, such as Fen Ditton Parish Council, Tevisham, and the Abbey Estate. But we're also looking to activate residents to support their own community. And we're looking to have a legacy of a grant scheme, a small grant scheme for the local community to undertake activities. It's very much a case of helping them through the early stages and leaving a legacy once we're no longer involved. It's also building up a local sense of identity in Mali, and I certainly found that when I went to the farmers market, there is already, and spoke to some of the residents, they feel that the community is welcoming at the moment, and they're very much interested in being part of a community, a local community in Mali. So we've got a number of partner groups. We've got a steering group, which is made up of the local councils, South Cambs, of course, city and the county council, the developer and the landowner, and there is a land trust which is being set up to manage the community facilities in the long term. And we're also working with L&Q, who are managing the affordable shared ownership housing. But most importantly, we're also looking to work with the community themselves. So we've got a group of service delivery providers where we're meeting on a fairly regular basis to talk about the new community, and the services which already exist and those which could be enhanced. I've talked a little bit about the self-sustaining legacy. It's very much looking to support the residents to serve themselves going forwards, and helping them if they need upskilling, linking to those key partners that I was mentioning, and the wider community, and potentially helping them to look at some sort of new structure, new vehicle, which they may need in the future. So this is some of the activity that we've been doing so far. This is a postcard which is part of the welcome pack, and alongside that postcard they can belong to a Facebook group which we've set up. There is a community services guide which is available online, and we're keeping that up to date, and we're also inviting them to contact us directly, so that we can triage any inquiries which they have. So this is the Facebook and the service directory. I imagine probably our slides will be shared later on. This is us, and that's the final picture which I took at the farmers market. Again, it sort of illustrates this part of the building will be the affordable housing, so that's well underway. So I think that's probably as much as I need to say, but I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Debbie. Sorry, I was just having a momentary issue unmuting myself. Thank you for the presentation. Julian, do we have any questions for Debbie?
We have, what engagement are you having with existing community groups and organisations across both Cambridge and South Cambs?
Yes, we're building on that. We've just had a service delivery board meeting where we had wide representation from local community groups such as the Abbey people who are the Abbey ward next door. We've invited a number of church organisations to join that service delivery board. We're also talking to obviously the council members, and we are, I think the service directory actually is probably the place where we're making the widest number of partners available, or the widest number of contacts available. We're very much working with Cambridge United Trust, with Living Sport. We're working with the local doctor's surgery, and we're looking to build that service delivery board to be as widely inclusive as possible.
If I can just jump in, I know you mentioned councils, Debbie, but that also includes parish councils. The parish councils are on the steering group for the work that locality is doing.
Thanks, Louise. Julian, do we have any further questions for Debbie?
Yeah, there's a question regarding a grant scheme, and what is the source funding for that scheme?
Yes, the source funding will be a small amount which we will put in as locality. L&Q have already indicated that they've got a grant scheme which they run. So we'll be looking to top that up and looking for other contributions, but we envisage that it will be relatively small, but useful for community groups that want to get started. So, for example, they might come to us for £500 to start a particular walking group, sports group. It's very much going to be what the community is asking for, and what seems to be good use of that funding. It's seed corn funding really, rather than something which we envisage will be a continuous investment.
Thanks, Debbie. I think that's all the questions on that item, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Julian. Thank you very much, Debbie, for that. So we have a period of time on the agenda now, which is for open questions. I wonder, Julian, if there are some questions we didn't answer in relation to the specific sites that we might like to revisit.
Yeah, sure, let's do that. I think the first two are regarding nature and cycling for the first item on land north of Cherry Hinton. How do the greenways link up with nature corridors in the current local plan and the Barnwell Nature Reserve and pollinator corridors? And also, how will the cycleways in development link up to the existing cycle path and Chisholm Trail? Maybe one for Daniel.
Alexis.
Do you want me to answer that one?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So just to say, what we'll do is I'm very happy for us to come back with any specifics in terms of showing how these things connect through. A lot of them will have been established already at the outline planning stage, and we haven't taken away any of the green links that were already planned at that point. So the intention with the new greenways and other green spaces we're adding is to improve green connections, actually kind of deeper within the site, as it were. But I'm very happy for us to come back with more detail on that.
Thank you. Could you give an estimated density of habitation and green space area per inhabitant for the site and compare with Cambridge averages? Very specific.
Not off the top of my head. Again, I think we're very happy to provide those. It's certainly for the next sort of iteration of these meetings, as we have more detail on it. The outline consent did establish a broad density kind of matrix for the whole site, which we'll be able to use as a comparator with where we are and where it was, and sort of show how they relate. But I can't, I'm afraid, off the top of my head, give you those numbers now.
Thanks. We have, Chair, a lot of questions regarding traffic and the cumulative effects of all the developments coming forward in this area.
Yes.
Just picking out a few about running from the airport to Coldham's Lane, the impact of construction traffic. And I wondered, I know David Allett from the County Council is with us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Julian. David, I wonder if you'd be able to speak in general terms about how those matters would be considered by the County Council, and if you'd just introduce yourself first of all. Thank you.
Of course, I'm David Allett, Interim Growth and Development Manager at the County Council. I've been involved in the land north of Cherry Hinton site since the SPD stage and through the application. The SPD set out the range of connections that would be required to make the site work and how it would need to tie in with the sustainable transport network. And then through the application itself, we went through the transport assessment process. That's about assessing the future year, understanding the committed development and committed transport schemes in the area, testing the junctions, and that ultimately fed into a multimodal mitigation package, which means with that mitigation package means that the development can come forward without severe impact on the surrounding transport network. I think it would be useful if after this we circulated a diagram showing the nature of the mitigation measures secured, but at this stage I'd just emphasize that the full transport assessment process was undertaken. That included transport modelling, and in line with the principles of the SPD, a multimodal package was secured to get people using public transport and to make it easy as possible to cycle. As part of a construction management approach, there is a condition on the development to present a construction management plan, which the county and planning authority would have to be approved as being the best way of ensuring the site can be constructed in a way that's sympathetic to local needs.
David, just to clarify for people, could you just expand on what an SPD is for those who don't know?
Yeah, apologies for the acronym there. This is a supplementary planning document that's part of the local plan, but provides a bit more detail, emphasising the policies further and how they apply to the site specifically.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Julian. I see there's also several questions about the scheme coming forward at Coldham's Lane Lakes, the Anderson scheme. David, it's fair to say, isn't it, that that scheme will need to take account of committed developments such as land north of Cherry Hinton when it's making its own transport assessment. Is that correct?
Indeed, it will. We've provided early steer on these schemes as the plans were being drawn up, but indeed we'll have to go through the full TA process, check that the figures are reasonable and sensible, and we would be making a recommendation to the planning authority about that in due course.
Thank you, David. Julian, do we have any further questions?
I've got a specific one, recycling. Is the council doing anything about walking and cycling through the railway overbridge beside Sainsbury's is being seen as very hazardous? I don't know, David, if you're aware of that.
Well, at the Sainsbury's junction, this development will facilitate a scheme there. I think it's best viewed in the round with the plan that we will share, showing all of the interventions that have been brought forward in the wider area and those facilitated by this development.
Thank you.
Julian, do we have further questions?
We don't have any more specific questions, but I wondered, Chair, if we might introduce an item at the next meeting regarding all the transport issues.
Yes, I think that's a good idea. We can bring an item to the next meeting. We can ask the County Council through David to be present, perhaps to talk about the wider transport infrastructure plans in this part of Cambridge. As I see, that was a question earlier as well. Thank you. Julian, do we have any other questions in relation to Ida Darwin?
We don't, I don't think. There was some comments regarding surely we should not be building new houses without solar and heat pump. Makes a nonsense of the climate crisis. And I think Gary did mention solar panels, but is there anything further, Gary, you'd like to say on that one?
Yeah, I mean, we are providing solar panels on the houses, and also we're building to a higher standard than the current building regulations, and then an element of the site will be built to the Future Home Standard. In addition, there's a planning condition that requires the show homes that we provide have a series of eco upgrades that individual purchasers can buy and opt into. So those will be, and so they'll be provided as part of the scheme as well. So overall, it's going to perform better than your average development and meet the Future Home Standard, which is coming out next year.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Julian, if we don't have any further questions, I'll just ask if there are any members of the public who would like to suggest items for a future agenda. If you can either pop them in the chat or contact our community development colleagues after the meeting, that would be very welcome. Just one final check as to whether or not we have any further questions, Julian.
Just one regarding gas mains. There's mention of gas mains being laid. If this is going to be illegal by 2025.
Is this with regard to gas boilers, do you mean?
I presume so, yeah.
May refer to, I did refer to a gas main. We've got an existing gas main that runs across land north of Cherry Hinton and which we'll be diverting. That's what I was referring to, not a new gas main for the site. We probably won't be, similar to what Gary was talking about. Gas is obviously not appropriate in terms of providing sustainable homes, so we won't be providing gas to our new homes.
Will the houses have EV charging points?
Yes.
Yes, they will. Yeah. And we've also been working with some of the energy suppliers to make sure that they are the 7 kilowatt car chargers. And we've actually come up with an arrangement that we can offer group wide, where the meter cupboard and the electricity supply is set up so that the individual so if they've got a Tesla that needs the higher the volume, then they can opt very easily for the improved EV charge point, and that just slots straight onto the provision that the plate that we provide. But other than that, the 7 kilowatt will be provided as standard.
Thanks, Gary. I see a couple of comments with regard to transport and specifically the railway bridge at Sainsbury Junction. I think those are items that we will need to pick up in consultation with the County Council transport colleagues for an item at the next meeting, but thank you for putting those forward. I don't see any further questions. So I think it just falls to me to say thank you to all of our speakers who've come along this evening. Thanks for taking the time and for giving the presentations. And thank you to all the members of the public and the councillors who've attended and contributed. If there are any further unanswered questions that we haven't spotted, we will pick those up after the meeting. But I think that's everything from us for this evening. So thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.